All right, now we're going to move on to talk about unemployment, which is a huge thing this year. Let's see if it opens. Come on, PowerPoint. All right. So at the end of this, you're going to be able to understand the factors and distinctions that exist when calculating the unemployment rates. You're going to be able to explain why a natural rate of unemployment is actually desirable, and you're going to be able to describe the cost of high unemployment. So there's a simple formula that we use to determine the unemployment rate. And so that formula is the unemployed workers divided by the employed workers plus the unemployed workers. So it's simple, right? Let me write that down. So now we have to figure out who are employed workers and who are unemployed workers. So employed workers are people that worked for pay in the last week, have a job but may have been sick or on vacation, and are at least 16 years old. If you're under 16 and you have a job, you're not considered an employed worker. So who are the unemployed workers? So the unemployed workers are people who've worked less than an hour in the last week, have actively looked for work in the last 4 weeks. That's important. You have to actually be looking, are available for work, and not in the military or an institution. So suppose there are 8 unemployed workers in an economy that has 24 employed workers. So we're going to work out what the unemployment rate is. So our unemployed workers, it says there's 8, but we have to figure out our total number of workers. So we take 24 plus 8 because we have 24 employed people. So it's 8 divided by 32, which is 25%, 1/4. Simple math, right? So the shortfalls of the unemployment rates. The unemployment rate is a useful tool for measuring the conditions in the job market, but it does not measure 2 important factors. One is the discouraged workers. These are capable workers, but they've given up looking for a job for at least 4 weeks. And then underemployed workers. These are people with a job, but it's below their wage and skill level. So like you could have a doctorate degree, but you're working minimum wage at McDonald's. You're underemployed. It should also be pointed out that the overall unemployment rate does not tell the whole story when it comes to demographics either. Let me get all these up. So the average rate of unemployment between 2007 and 2012 is 7.7%. The average rate for men over 20 is 7.6. Women over 20 is 6.6. White people, 7.0. Latino and Hispanic, 10%. Black or African American, 13.1%. And teenagers, 22.1%. So this total 7.7% does not show the whole picture of what the average or what the unemployment rate is. There are 4 types of unemployment. So the first is frictional. When people are fired, laid off, or quit, there is an inevitable period of time in which they must look for a job. So that's frictional unemployment. Structural occurs when there is a surplus of laborers in a particular job market because the wage rate is too high. Cyclical, these are changes in the unemployment rate caused by fluctuations in the business cycle. And seasonal refers to workers who have short-term jobs based on the season. So examples may include migrant farm workers, some athletes, some actors or actresses, and holiday workers such as Santa Claus. Economists have determined that a natural state of unemployment exists, which is acceptable and even desirable for a well-functioning economy. Frictional, structural, and seasonal unemployment are acceptable, so we added these together to get the natural rate of unemployment. Cyclical unemployment is the difference between natural and actual unemployment. So here's your natural rate. Your natural rate is the adding frictional, structural, and seasonal. And then the cyclical, the actual rate, you can see it fluctuates. So you take these numbers on the actual rate on the blue line and subtract them from the natural rate for the same year, and you get your cyclical unemployment. Policymakers try to keep cyclical unemployment low so that unemployment is near the natural rate. When unemployment drops below the natural rate, cyclical unemployment is negative, but inflation can be high, which is the cost of products. Unemployment as an indicator. The unemployment rate is a strong indicator of an economy's strength. There is a correlation between the unemployment rate and recessions. Recessions is when the economy does not do well. Unemployment increases during recession. So you see all these peaks right here. This is when unemployment is high. So all those purple lines is when unemployment is high. Unemployment decreases during times of economic growth. So you'll know the economy is doing well when the unemployment numbers start to go down. There is a correlation between the unemployment rates and real GDP growth because more people are employed, so more products are being made. So you can see the line decreasing, the average slope, it's decreasing. When the unemployment rate increases, real GDP growth decreases because there's less people making less stuff. And when the unemployment rate decreases, real GDP growth increases. So now you should understand the factors and distinctions that exist when calculating the unemployment rate, explain why a natural rate of unemployment is desirable, and describe the cost of high unemployment. She was just cleaning the door, honey. So now let's look at the class activity. All right, so the table below lists the characteristics of employed people and the characteristics of unemployed people. And the problems that follow, we're going to first identify whether the person is employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force at all. And then use the characteristics from the table to explain why you made that decision. So we're going to do the first two together, and then you're going to be on your own, and then we'll answer a few on the back together. All right. So Jill has a job at a nursing home, but she did not work in the last week because she was on vacation. So is Jill employed, unemployed, or not in the workforce? So employed people worked for pay in the last week, at least 1 hour, have a job, but may have been sick, on vacation, etc., and are at least 16 years old. Unemployed people worked less than an hour in the last week, actively looked for work in the last 4 weeks, are available for work, and not in the military or an institution. So is she employed or unemployed? She's unemployed? She's employed. She was on vacation. So how do you know? She was on. Yeah, she was on vacation. So letter B. All right, Ben worked 20 hours last month as an actor, but he has spent this month doing auditions, so he was looking for a job. So is he employed or unemployed? He spent the last month looking for a job. He's unemployed. Which letter? 4 weeks is a month. So is it D, E, F, or G? It's E, right? Because he's actively looked for work in the last 4 weeks. It says he spent this month doing auditions. So he actively looked for work. All right, so I'm gonna let you guys do 3 through 6 on your own, but let's look at the back real quick. So each problem below lists several different groups of people. Use your knowledge of who to include when calculating the unemployment rate to find the unemployment rate in each example. I didn't put a box here. Okay. There we go. All right, so oh, come on. So our unemployed workers for number 7 are 5. Ignore the really crappy handwriting. And our employed workers plus unemployed workers, so we're going to divide that. So 5 plus 195 is what? 200. So unemployed, 5. Employed plus unemployed, 195 plus 5. So what's 5 divided by 200? 0.25. To make that a percent, you move the dot over 2 times, so it's 2.5%. That did not erase at all. Okay, so unemployed workers for letter 8. So remember, unemployed, so look back here to tell you if they've worked less than an hour, they're actively looking, are available for work, and not in the military or an institution. So number 8, who are we counting? So if they worked last week, they're employed. If they filled out applications, they're unemployed. So I'm going to highlight that one. So we're going to include them. Not what I wanted. If they've interviewed, that means they're looking for a job. Homemakers, are they looking for work?
No.
No. If they're retired, are they looking for work? No. So the only 2 that we're going to include in our unemployed workers are the filled out applications and interviewed. So for this one, our unemployed workers is 20 plus 5. And then we're going to divide that by employed workers, which is 100. And then plus our unemployed workers. So that's going to be plus 20 plus 5. So 20 plus 5 is 25. And then 100 plus 20 plus 5 is 125. So 25 divided by 125 is 0.2. So that's 20%, because you remember you move the decimal over twice. So your response here is going to be 20%. All right. So I'm not going to do the math with you for this one, but we'll look at who is actually working. So have jobs, those are your employed people. If they're attending school, So are they unemployed? Does it say they're looking for work? No. If they've been laid off this week, have they actively looked for work? Have they worked less than an hour in the last week? So they're unemployed. So we're going to highlight them. And then in the military, unemployed people, it says not in the military, so we can't include them. And then worked for 30 minutes. Here it says worked less than an hour. So we're going to include them. So those are your two categories to include in your unemployed numbers. Mark that somewhere on your paper so you know. And you're going to be on your own for answering that last math problem. All right, and then we're going to do two of these together on letter C. So which type of unemployment? All the people described below are considered unemployed. Use your knowledge of the different types of unemployment to identify which type describes each person. So let's go back and look at our 4 types of unemployment. So we have frictional, when people are fired, laid off, or quit. Structural, when there's a surplus of laborers in a particular job market. Cyclical, these are changes in the unemployment rate caused by fluctuations in the business cycle. Or seasonal, people who have short-term jobs based on the season. So number 10 says, Frank normally makes a living by picking citrus fruit, but it's not yet time to harvest any crops. So he's seasonal, because here it says, examples include migrant farm workers. So it's the time of this year, it's not time of the year for the citrus fruit to be in yet, because he's only unemployed because it's the wrong time of the year. So Nicole is a certified social studies teacher. She has filled out hundreds of applications, but she cannot find any work. This is likely because the labor union keeps the wages for social studies teachers too high. So what type of unemployment is she? If the wages are too high, what'd you say, Zoe? Structural? Yes. Come on. Oh, that's fine. Structural, because the wages are too high. Make sense? All right, Rebecca was laid off last week because the company she works for is experiencing shrinking profits. So which one's that going to be? Cyclical, because they're experiencing shrinking profits. There we go, that's the word. All right, and you guys will do 13, 14, and 15 on your own. But before I release you to do that, let's look at the homework page. All right, flip it over to the homework. So the graph below illustrates the unemployment rate in the United States from 1950 to 2012. Use your knowledge of the relationship between the unemployment rate and recessions to answer the first part, and then use your knowledge of the different types of unemployment to answer the second part. So it says recessions, number 1, I'm reading. Recessions generally occur when the unemployment rate increases. Without looking at your notes, draw vertical lines on the graph to indicate where you think recessions occurred in United States history. Well, if unemployment rate is increasing, it's going to be these parts, right? So we're going to draw a line right here. I'm going to draw a line right here. It's all like the peaks where it's increasing. All right, make sense? Easy, easy, easy. And then you're going to do the same thing that you were doing on the other page down here. Each scenario below describes an unemployment situation. Indicate which type of unemployment is being described: frictional, structural, cyclical, or seasonal. So let's look. Frictional, when people are fired, laid off, or quit. Structural, a surplus of laborers because the wages rate is too high. Cyclical, changes caused by the fluctuations in the business cycle. Or seasonal, people who have short-term jobs based on the season. So in October 1970, Jesse was laid off from his manufacturing job. So 1970 ends up that it was going up. So what type of unemployment would that be? It's going to be cyclical because the unemployment rate was increasing. 1998, Daniel's company laid him off because of overly high wages. Well, which one's the high wages? Structural. Unemployment rose in January of 1967 despite a strong economy. Cyclical. All right, makes sense? And then on the back, you're going to have some math. This is what I wanted to go over. So each month, the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics calls 60,000 people to determine if they are employed, unemployed, or not in the labor force. A fictional example of the data is listed below. Calculate the data to find the current unemployment rate and the change in the unemployment rate from the previous month. To find the likely real GDP growth rate, look at the graph on the bottom of the page. It illustrates the relationship between the change in unemployment rate and the real GDP growth rate. All right, so current unemployment rate. So remember our formula. So we have our unemployed divided by our employed plus unemployed. So 30,000 plus 4,500 is 34,500. So we're going to do our unemployed divided by 34,500. So unemployment rate is 13%. And then we're going down to February. So this is January and February. So we had some people find jobs. Remember, we're not counting the not in labor force because they're not looking for a job. So our employed is 30,500 plus our unemployed, we get our bottom number is 34,900. And then we take our top number, which is our unemployed rate, so 4,400 divided by this. So we got 4,400 divided by 34,900. So that's 12.6. So 12.6%. So 13% minus 12.6%. That's 0.4%. That's a positive. If it went down, it's negative actually, because it went down. So because we decreased, it's a negative. If it increases, it's positive. So our likely real GDP growth rate, we're going to look down here. So if our 0.4%, so it's going to be about 0.5. I'm just looking at the graph where our 0.4% would be. And then in March, remember our formula, find our lowest, our bottom number first. So we're gonna add our employed and unemployed. So that's our bottom number, 34,800. And we're gonna take our unemployed divided by 34,800. So that's 12%. So our unemployment rate continues to decrease. So between February and March, we decreased 0.6%. Whoops. So 0.6. We are at about 0.5%. So keep going down on April and May. Questions for those two papers? I think you guys got it.